Hey everyone, Ashley May and Mike Beer here with the Daily Racing Form, taking a look at one of the pick fives this Saturday down in Hot Springs at Oaklawn Park. They have their big day of racing, Mike. Obviously, the feature being the Arkansas Derby. That's where the sequence ends. It gets started, though, in race number 9, which, as we take a look at the field here, it's a maiden special weight event, which I feel like you might like a few, you might like one. It's sort of a wide open, kind of weird race to kick off the sequence.
Do have two, shorter prices on the morning line in here. Two horses who have already run fast enough to make them really tough in here. Actually, this race is really all about the distance. It's 9 furlongs, and I feel like it's not going to be easy for a lot of these horses to get that far.
And you mentioned the horses Zero Sugar and the 4 Oi Jabald, who one of them has the experience, at least more experience under the belt, and does have a 2-turn race where this one was second behind Zatz. The one was part of the pace, and the other was second to Cornucopian, who we will see in the 13th race on the program, the Arkansas Derby. So curious to see your key use defend grid here as we'll flash that up, because I felt like these are horses that, I don't know. For me, I would probably put one of them in the key spot and maybe one in the use spot. And I see you have a similar sort of stance, one in the key and one in the defend.
Yeah, I get that one of them, it could just come down to these two horses. They're too fast, and one of them will just win here. I didn't necessarily look at the race that way. If you told me I had to take one, I would just take the 4 because he's already been long, and I thought he ran fine in that race. I'll just kind of make Zero Sugar prove it. Maybe I'll defend with him a little bit. And I just felt like outside of them, I wanted prices in this race. Just in case, again, the distance to me is a huge equalizer here. I thought Fever Night, the 5. I thought he ran pretty well after kind of a no chance trip behind a wire-to-wire winner last time. I hate that he has no speed, but I'll use him in here. And then I just thought, the 6 Wise Decision, I think, is way faster than he looks on paper. And I think he is going to make the lead in this race. And so I just felt like that made him a little dangerous at a price. Iron Dome, I don't know what you thought about his debut, Ash. I just thought he was, I don't love that he took no money for Asmussen. But he just looked a little green to me in that race. Like he really needed the start, and I'm not surprised he stretches right out for this.
Let's use those 4 horses in your key spot. I see you do have a couple of defends in here, starting with the 3 Zero Sugar, who you're not going to use in the use, but you will defend.
I guess I'll defend with him. I don't know. This could come down to, it's the first leg too. If he takes a ton of money, I can see myself just cutting him and taking my chances. I'm not using him. I threw the Brad Cox horse in there as well, the 8. I don't love him, but maybe he's another horse who's coming out of a race where he just had no chance behind a wire-to-wire winner. Maybe he can do better.
And you also have the 10 there, Kavanaugh. So we'll take a look at my key use defend here. And a lot of the similar horses, I do go a little skinnier. For me, I think the key is the 4 for the same reasons that you said. Has the experience going long. That, I think, is the edge over the 3. That's why I have the 3 in the use spot. I'm not going to take anything away from Zero Sugar being second behind Cornucopian, who we know is going to take a lot of money in the Arkansas Derby, but still a tall task to go from 6 furlongs to a mile and an 1/8. I think it's a tall task for any horse. So that's why I give this 4 the nod there, make that the key. I mentioned I use the 3 Zero Sugar, but also I will use the 8, the Brad Cox horse. And I agree with you. I don't necessarily love this horse, but the debut was okay at the fairgrounds. I think this horse needed more ground, and not sure what happened last time out, but the blinkers on was the key move for me. I think there's some upside with this one, and not a bad thing to see Flavian Pratt look to ride, and a good price at 10-1. So we'll move on to the second leg here of the sequence, race number 10, which is a stakes race. It's the Eclipse, $145,000 at the 6 furlong distance for 4-year-olds and upward. And I thought in this sequence, this might be the best betting race, where there are easily, I think, 5 or 6 horses that could win this.
I'm not going to disagree with that. To me, this was the race I struggled with maybe more than any of the others in the sequence. The longer I looked at it, the more frustrated I got, actually. I just don't really feel like I have a good handle on it. And I ultimately, at least as far as the pick 5 goes, I just sort of settled on the morning line favorite, the number 5 Lendelson. I just feel like I'm going to key him in this because his recent form is really, really good. And if he just shows up here and runs the races that he's been running at this meet so far, I just think he's going to be really tough in here. I couldn't really talk myself into anyone else.
As we move to your key use defend grid here, I think Wendelson, he might be the horse to beat in a lot of ways. Even when he was second last time out, Booth came back and scored again with some really flashy Beyer speed figures. So you key on him, but you do use several others in here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to, it's the kind of race where I don't love Wendelson. I just feel like maybe this is the right spot. And I struggled with this race enough to, try to lean on him. And then if I need backups, get her number. Obviously, the one he's got plenty of races that would win this thing. It's just such a long layoff that it feels like maybe that's going to be too much working against him. But he's run well fresh in the past. It's not layoffs as long as this one, but he's run well fresh in the past. I know his good race is good enough. So I wanted to throw him in there at a price. I threw Durante in there as well. His last two races are both good. And it feels like Jacobson's been shopping for a spot for this horse. He's had him entered at least twice since that victory last time, but he scratched him both times, and this is where he shows up.
You also use the 6 Ninja Warrior, who's another common horse as we take a look at my key use defend, who I'll actually make a key in here, especially at that price of 6-1. I don't think this is a horse that's going to take a lot of love just because the figure last time out, it's an 86. But when you see all the 90s, I feel like he's going to be pushed to the side a little bit. But I think there's a ton of upside, I think, in terms of trip in those last two. He's been tactical enough where a couple others might be further behind early. A couple might be sort of hooking up. And I wonder if he can take a step forward. He will need a bigger figure, though, with his career best being a 94. The 9, another big price here. This is the stablemate of Wendelson. And for me, I guess the selling point that I found really intriguing is Luan Machado climbing aboard. Obviously, Tyler Bacon, the apprentice, had a decision to make, made the decision, and I understand that. But I just feel like we've done some previews, Mike, that this horse has the ability to show more than he has in his last two. And I think in those last two, he's been further back than is necessary. I think he could be another one where he could get a good trip depending how fast they went. Look at the race 3 back, kind of in between on times for the half. And he was much closer to the action and ended up drawing clear in there. So curious to see what he can do with a new rider. And then I agree. I think on paper, the 5, Wendelson's a use for me. Just not going to offer value. It's going to take a lot of play in here. And also the 3 is the other horse that you mentioned, Durante, who I think was nice to see take a step forward. The freshening did him well. And I think a nice thing about that is David Jacobson usually wheels him back right away. He didn't. And I like that he's had time again to step up here. So the middle leg of the sequence is race number 11. And the action continues. Another stakes race, Mike, but we'll stretch out around 2 turns, a mile and a 16th in the American Pharoah. And there's some quality in here in terms of Bishop's Bay, who was highly touted in the past, Liberal Arts, Maycock's Bay, and even Honor Marie making a return.
It's a tough race. I feel like a lot of different horses could win here. And so I didn't want to go too skinny, but I will say, Ashley, this is a race where I'm really interested in the 6 Liberal Arts, and I'd like to bet him to win in this race. He's not the kind of horse I would, necessarily single in a race, like in a sequence like the pick 5. I do want to bet this horse though.
I have a feeling with that in mind, he might be your key at 10-1 on the morning line. We'll look at your key use defend grid here. And it's a really competitive event. I feel like pace is going to make the race. So you go to the 1, 3, and the 6 here in the key spot.
Yeah, I didn't have enough confidence in Liberal Arts, as far as the pick 5 goes, but, just to stand alone with him. But I do want to use him heavily. I do want to press him, and I'll probably bet him to win in here. I've liked this horse right from the start anyway. And I just feel like his most recent race there, boy, you talk about a horse having a no chance trip. Boy, he had, once he studied at the start of that race and wound up last, he had no chance. And I just thought he did really well to finish third. I really want to use him a lot. I'm a Bishop's Bay fan. I liked him as a 3-year-old. He missed a lot of time after that. It does feel like he's, sort of racing himself back into shape for Brad Cox. He was really good winning his most recent start. Not surprised they step him back up in class for this race. And I don't love Ben Dugan in this race. I couldn't leave him out. He's got plenty of races that would beat this field.
Then you can see in your defense spot, the 4 Magic Tap and the 7 Maycock's Bay. And curious to get your thoughts on them because I feel like their trips could be potentially opposites in here.
Yeah, well, yeah, Magic Tap, I know he's going to be a price in here, and I just wonder if he's going to finally be able to sort of move forward here. He's second off the left. He's got races that sort of, especially early on, I thought they pointed him out as a horse who had a real chance to be a pretty good horse, and he just never really got a 4-year-old campaign going, actually. It only ran down here a few times, and his campaign was over in April. So, maybe he's ready to start moving forward here. I could throw him in there at a price, especially because there are races coming up where I just didn't go deep at all. And Maycock's Bay, I don't know. I don't love this horse, but it feels like Stidham's gotten realistic with him. He had him entered in 2 way tougher races last weekend, and he scratched from both of them to run here.
Even his other spots, look at Hit Show, Hall of Fame, the winners of those last 2. So he has been in deeper waters. We'll move to my key use defend grid here. And I see it similarly in terms of your key was 1, 3, and 6, and they are either a combination of the key or the use for me. I do like Ben Dugan here, and I can see why maybe one would say, all right, I'm going to maybe just use him or defend him for the purpose that he's lost his last 2. And I feel like And the last time out, I feel like he should have been able to get up. He was moving pretty good and just missed. And they're different trips, but I'm just hoping that second off now, the freshening, that's the key for him. Like that they gave him ample time off in between the races, almost 5 months, and I think he'll be poised to run a good race. I don't mind, I should say, the 4-1 on the morning line, and he gets Johnny V in the irons. And then for me, I think the uses Bishop's Bay. I agree. I think he has a ton of talent. Little bit of a layoff is slight concern for me, but not when you have Flavia, not when you have the connections of Brad Cox. They'll have him in a good position. And then I agree, the 6th Liberal Arts. I know he's 0 for 3 at Oaklawn, but he's going to offer value in here. He may need a race, but he was able to run fresh off a longer layoff back in November at Churchill. 7.5, different ball game, 1 turn. But he's just a very tremendously talented horse who I feel like has been sort of, I don't know, not appreciated as much, especially even as a 3-year-old, some of those races where I think he went off at odds that he shouldn't have, if that's just my opinion. So that's how I see the 11th. We'll move to the 12th, where the 3-year-old fillies are in the spotlight. It's the grade 2 fantasy, a field of 10 ready to go, a mile and a 16th. And Mike, Kentucky Oaks points here on the line. And I guess on paper, the big 2 names are the 5 Quiet Side, fresh off the win in the Honeybee. And then we'll also see the return of the 7 Simply Joking, who was able to win at the fairgrounds back in January.
Yeah, we'll see how the betting shakes out. Certainly, I understand why the 5 and the 7 are the 2 favorites on the morning line in here. I didn't really necessarily feel like, at least in my opinion, I didn't feel like they necessarily stood out in this field, Ashley. They can both win, but did you see them as sort of standouts in here? I thought this race was open to some other horses.
I wouldn't be surprised if either of them win. Nicest way I can say it. It wouldn't be shocking. I think out of the 2, I have doubted Quiet Side along the way, and then I think she made me shut up a little bit in the Honeybee. I thought she looked very good and got a good trip. Simply Joking, she's, had 2 great races, but we haven't seen her since January. So I think when you look at it from that angle, the layoff's a little bit of a concern for me. And then in Quiet Side, does she have the ability to put back-to-back wins? We'll find out on Saturday, but I think that's why I started to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I did too. So we'll see, how it all shakes out here. We can put the, my grid up there first, I guess. I get Simply Joking. I like both of her races, and I do in a lot of ways think she's the horse to beat, but it's not like she doesn't still have questions to answer. I mean, they did stretch her out in a tough spot last time, but she got loose on the lead over a wet track. And so, I just don't know how much stock I'm supposed to put in it. And the shorter price she goes off at, the less I like her and the more I'd be just sort of looking to take shots against her. We'll see how it all plays out. To me, you mentioned the Honeybee. You're correct that Quiet Side, ran really well in there. My take on that race is if you weren't right up close to the pace, you had absolutely no chance. And so I'm just not sure how much credit I want to give Quiet Side for winning that race, for just sitting a perfect trip and winning in a race where nobody could make up any ground in there. The horse that I'm betting in this race and that I'm keen in this pick 5 is Take Charge, My Lady, who's got the rail this time. Again, that race was dominated on the lead last time. She got bumped between horses at the start and wound up last in that race. And to me, just had absolutely no chance. I'm putting a line through that. 2 starts back. To me, she beat Quiet Side fair and square in the Martha Washington, and she did it easily. I'm expecting her to rebound in a big way in here.
I think so too. And as we look at my key, use defend, she is one of my keys to this pick 5 because she's going to offer value. And I just think you talk about the Honeybee being close to it. She wasn't, and I expected her to be, and she just did not get a trip in there. And I think her race was over from the get-go. So I'm willing to use her. I did back her in the Martha Washington. I thought she did get a better trip than Quiet Side, but she also drew clear by nearly 6 lengths. It was a compact field. I just think the talent is certainly there. If I had to pick between the 5 and the 7, I just think Quiet Side. She's consistent. She hasn't had those breaks where the layoff's a little bit of a concern for me with Simply Joking, where she could still certainly fire and be in the money. She could win it. But at 8-5 on the morning line, I can't make her a key. I think she has to be a use. And I'll be honest, Mike, I tried to look for others in here. I looked at the 6 Necessity, who I do think is a pretty good filly. I was really impressed with her maiden score. I thought her Honeybee was okay, but I'm just concerned as she has to face some of the others again. And then the other one I looked at was the 9 Princess Aaliyah for Dwayne Lucas, who just seems to be blossoming at the right time. She took a big step forward, but I just don't know if she gets the right setup in here to win. So for me, I left them off of my pick 5. We'll move to the big race, the Arkansas Derby Grade 1 event, race 13 on the program. We know $1.5 million and a field of 9 here, Mike, highlighted by, I guess on the morning line, the 9 Cornucopium, but also the 8 Coal Battle, going to take a lot of people's respects and a long look in here.
Yeah, Go Battle, really, really cool horse, underrated horse. He's got a lot going for him. Sandman, had a little bit of a bandwagon. He's got some things to prove now going forward. He's just dying to get a clean trip in one of these races and see if he can do better. But the race does kind of center around Cornucopian shipping back in here for Bob Baffert. He's got a big stretch out in front of him, but clearly very talented based on the only appearance so far.
We'll take a look at your grid for the Arkansas Derby, and let's see, gonna go skinnier, just going to key Cornucopian.
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of horse, Ashley, and obviously you can agree or disagree, but to me, when you're playing Cornucopian, especially at the price he's going to be in this race, you're either with him or you're against him. You either use him or you toss him. I don't feel like he's the kind of horse that you're supposed to be hedging with in pick fives. That's at least the way that I play him, and I feel like this is a 3-year-old crop that is just dying for horses to jump up and be real players in these last few weeks as we head to the Kentucky Derby. I don't really buy any of these other horses as serious contenders for that race. Cornucopian could be that horse. He was super impressive in his debut. I get that he's got to stretch out 3 furlongs in here, but there's a chance he's just better than these horses.
He got that 101 Beyer speed figure on debut, and be interesting to see how this ends, right? We talked about him winning that race, and the first leg of the sequence, the horses that finish behind him will square off. Yeah. For me, it is tough when I looked at the key use defend. I'll be honest, it's 7-5 on the morning line in terms of a win bet. I just can't bet Cornucopian. Yeah. I'm completely against it for every reason. So he's a use for me. If he wins this, I'm not shocked. If he finishes 4th, I'm also not shocked. Yeah. But it's just one of those horses, and it's a move by Bob Baffert that works for him. He has no problem taking horses off a sprint race that were heavily bet and favored, and then coming back in a graded stakes and being able to handle the stretch out. We've seen it time and time again, and it's not that he does it often, but I think he obviously has a very good pulse on sort of what horse Cornucopian is. But for me, the key is going to be Coal Battle. I've been really impressed with this horse since the first time that, I kind of paid attention to him, which was the Springboard Mile, and seeing where he's gone from that. 2 more wins. He's done it in different styles. If they went slow on the Smarty Jones, he found himself on the lead. I thought the ride in the Rebel was perfect. They made that sort of, I don't want to say early move, but a little bit earlier than everybody else. And he still drew clear. I love him for those reasons. I'm hoping we get to see him on the first Saturday in May, because I think there's a lot to like about this horse. So I do use him as my key. The other use outside of the 9 is the 3 Publisher, who I think is just a little bit better than maybe he's shown so far. I know he's a maiden, and maybe that's crazy, but I thought his Rebel race was actually pretty decent considering where he was early, and kind of talking about the move from Coal Battle and where he was placed. To finish 4th, beaten by less than 4, I think the blinkers on will be key for him, and maybe he can score an upset. It'll be curious to see. And I'll be honest, Sandman was my Southwest horse. I liked him in the Rebel, and now I don't know what to do with him from this whole standpoint of how do you defend him? I can defend the Southwest. The Rebel, he just didn't get the job done again. So he was going to be a defend for me, and I ended up just kind of tossing him here out of my pick 5. So we'll take a look at your grid completely here at Mike for this pick 5 on Saturday out at Oaklawn Park, so everyone can get a good view of it. And you went a little bit deeper on some races, but some of them you are very, very strong and just going to key, say in race 10 and then in race 13.
Yeah, getting to the last 2 races, I'd be pretty happy just to get alive to the 1 and then to the 9 and take my chances there. And some of the earlier races I didn't have as strong an opinion, so I just sort of wanted to give myself chances. That I'm really concerned about that second leg, actually, the 10th race. I don't have a good handle on that race, and maybe I should have actually included even more horses in there just because I'm so skinny late. But that's the race that I'm really worried about getting through that one.
I think it's going to be a good race, not only in, say, horizontals, but in the verticals. I think it's a really competitive race on the card. I'll take a look here at my full grid for key, use, and defend for these 5 races. And we use a lot of the same horses in the key or the use sort of section in here. I think the main difference is probably the last, as you've talked about, the Arkansas Derby. You're all in on the 9. I'm not completely sold on him, and we'll go a little bit price shopping with the 8 Coal Battle, who I'm a little shocked is 3rd choice on the morning line. I thought he'd be a shorter price than maybe Sandman. So we'll see what comes this Saturday down in Hot Springs. But if you're trying to get involved, don't forget shop.drf.com. It's a bunch of specials for the road to the Derby. You can get the past performances for this Saturday out at Oaklawn Park, and we wish you the best.